The personal, engaging nature of video games sometimes helps it become an elegant and emotive form of both communication and therapy for developers and players alike. These experiences aren't just about getting a high score or achieving a rad speedrun time, these are meant to hit you right in the feels. They translate the intangible yet recognisable burdens of mental illness into heart-wrenching experiences via striking music, gorgeous visual art, and elegant storytelling. Where some games may try and fail to accurately portray such difficult subject matter, the following list heralds those that have truly connected with their audiences. As you may have guessed, we're going to touch on topics that some may find uncomfortable, so please keep that in mind, and of course we will ask you to be respectful toward one another in the comments. Thank you. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 amazing video games that explore mental health. Number 10. Borderlands 2: Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. The Borderlands series is overflowing with raucous excess and bombastic humour, so it's easy to forget that the whole thing is actually set in a merciless hellscape. And it turns out that some of our favourite characters may be hiding a lot of pain and trauma behind their grins and quips. For instance, the whole Bunkers and Badasses DLC shows specifically how Tiny Tina struggles to deal with Roland's death. Yeah, she's an unstable and erratic character in general, but she's also a survivor of childhood trauma. She and her family were sold for mutation experiments after all. Although she's rambunctious and animated, she is still just a little girl, struggling to deal with the pain of loss. She's essentially depressed and in denial, and as a result, idolizes Roland as a Deus Ex Machina symbol at the end of her tabletop campaign. The Vault Hunters support her and help her come to the realization that her friend is truly gone and not coming back. It's actually quite a touching and unexpected moment that really shows us that the developers sought to consider some thoughtful storylines even within the boisterous facade. Number 9. Child of Light. This RPG, while not delicate in its metaphors, beautifully combines whimsical settings and an elegant art style with a somber, pensive tone that greatly adds to its charming nature. After the death of her mother and subsequent remarriage of her father, Aurora falls into a deep slumber during which she must learn to love, grow, and face her own grief via her adventures in a dreamlike fantasy world. This experience suggests that escapism, while comforting at the time, cannot replace true therapeutic growth. However, immersing oneself in a safe place can also provide the means for self-expression and self-improvement, especially if life proves too difficult to face head-on at the time. The sense of being lost in a strange world reflects the unmistakable sensation of being adrift amongst a sea of depression and grief. Things are similar, but not quite the same as they were. There's a haze, a filter over everything that makes the whole experience seem a little alien. While similar games use puzzles as a core mechanic to illustrate a sense of frustration and difficulty in one's mind, Child of Light uses combat to represent the internal battle and the ability to fly, literally reflecting the rise above one's struggles. It may not be subtle, but fairy tales seldom are. Number 8. Limbo. The exact meaning of Limbo has been up for debate since its release in 2010, with some suggesting that the game represents a journey into the afterlife or even the purgatorial state of a coma victim. Regardless, it's impossible to deny the oppressive, lonely, and desperate tone of the iconic indie title. As the lead character traverses a realm of monochromatic bleakness, he is pursued by fear and death, which many believe to be a painful metaphor for bereavement and loss. The boy is forced to delve deeper into the accursed land, searching for his sister until he eventually finds her burying his own body. His arduous suffering pushes him onwards, and with each agonizing failure, he edges closer to his grim destiny. If you've ever experienced depression or loss, you may know the feeling of complete hopelessness combined with an oppressive burden that seems to pursue your every waking moment. This is both purgatory and pressure, feeling lost and also feeling rushed towards some terrifying culmination of fear, loneliness, and quiet desperation. This is Limbo. Number 7. Neverending Nightmares. This horror video game was created to reflect the personal struggles of lead designer Matt Gilgenbach. In response to his ongoing battles with depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder, he noted that he wanted to recreate the feelings of hopelessness and bleakness that were so ever-present in his daily life. For those who have fortunately never experienced such trauma, the game will play just like any other indie horror game. However, for those familiar with the weight of mental illness, the experience will hit very close to home. The main character, Thomas, is plagued with nightmares of self-harm, and his steps are beleaguered by an omnipresent darkness. Also, as per design, the gameplay is deliberately frustrating, reflecting the ongoing labours of those who wrestle with mental illness. The developers intentionally avoided a sanitized view of such topics, instead opting to clearly display themes of self-destruction and suicide. It is stark, deliberate, and unapologetic, which appropriately pays respect to those who have such difficult notions at the forefront of their daily lives. Number 6. Fran Bow. There are quite a few indie horror games that go with the whole small child in a big scary strange world vibe, but Fran Bow does it in a way that seeps into your bones and weighs you down with its sense of impactful nuance and dreadful magnitude. Loss, grief, gaslighting, childhood trauma, and more are prevalent in this title. The endearing storybook art style not only represents the way of processing the world from a child's perspective, but also enhances the deep, dark symbolism of the tale via such unsettling juxtaposition. There are numerous commentaries out there that seek to unmask the true story of Fran Bow, with most agreeing on it being an exploration of how children process trauma, abuse, and consequently mistrust in authority figures. In the simplest of terms, Fran is a child trying to make sense of the horror of her situation. The use of alternate realities not only illustrates Fran's confusion and desperation to seek answers, but it also answers how our memories and thoughts can play tricks on us. The mind is a messy place, and very rarely is it wrapped up in a nice little bow for us to understand clearly. Number 5. Celeste. Platformers are an automatic allegory for overcoming obstacles. With each jump, we ascend further towards our goal. With each fall, we must climb back up and try again. This poignant title uses these themes to fully explore the inherent challenge of living with anxiety. Madeline, our determined protagonist, has resolved to climb the mountain Celeste, and the player is tasked with propelling her upwards via a combination of wall jumps, dashes, and climbs. Madeline, in turn, struggles to retain her grip physically and emotionally during the arduous struggle. Still, the difficulty isn't fetishized. There are assist modes that act as beautifully warm metaphors for accepting help during crisis. Despite Madeline's determination, however, other forces are hard at work to drag her back down. For instance, at the base of the mountain, billboards bear unhelpful slogans like "Man up" and display unattainable beauty standards. Distorted mirrors, a toxic reflection of self, savagely difficult platforming, they illustrate a specific journey through anxiety and self-doubt. And yet, no matter how many times Madeline and the player fall, it just gives them one more chance to get back up and try again. Number 4. Gris. Gris, meaning grey in Spanish, follows our heroine's experience with the 5 stages of grief via its symbolic world building. As the name suggests, colour plays a crucial part in establishing story and tone. Experiencing anguish can truly feel as though all vibrancy has been sapped from your sense of reality, and finding colour and hope once again can seem like an impossible task in the face of such monochromatic misery. As you progress and acquire new abilities, you're essentially rebuilding your confidence and self-belief, thereby allowing you to achieve control in a broken world. But you're not simply moving through a beautifully designed landscape, you're actually traversing your own mental panorama. It is striking, reflective, and symbolic in design, which comes as no surprise due to its representation of the mind. However, it doesn't come across as heavy-handed or brash in its portrayal. Instead, it is elegant and also meaningful. For anyone who has come to terms with losing a loved one, this enchanting video game experience truly reflects all shades of pain, love, and finally, acceptance. Number 3. The Cat Lady. The Cat Lady is a point-and-click style psychological horror title that follows the sad tale of Susan Ashworth, a deeply lonely woman trying to drag herself out of severe depression after the tragic death of her daughter and failed marriage. Unapologetically, the game begins in the aftermath of Susan's attempted suicide. From this point, Susan is tasked with fighting off her demons, both physical and psychological, after finding herself in some form of purgatory, wherein a mysterious old woman convinces her to undertake a daunting mission. Regardless of the surreal side of the story, this tale is securely rooted in a sense of painful, bleak realism. You won't witness beautiful backdrops like in Gris, nor will you find yourself in a fantastical setting as per Child of Light. This experience is detached, harsh, and tragic. It is brazenly austere and refuses to sugarcoat anything. The true horror comes from the despair of such an in-depth character portrait, not from jump scares or creepy monsters. It reminds us that the battle with mental illness isn't pretty or fashionable, and yet it isn't hopeless either. Number 2. Night in the Woods. Here we follow May, a 20-year-old college dropout who has to move back home with her parents, whereupon she undergoes critical self-reflection and rekindles friendships she once left behind. Throughout the game, it becomes clear that she is suffering from anxiety, depression, and dissociative disorder that all coalesce to make her feel both aimless and hopeless. As she tries to hide her feelings from both her parents and the player, we see how she instead desperately moves from day to day, barely scraping by in most social situations and interactions. She wanders through life without purpose and develops a life-shattering case of disillusionment. This portrayal of mental illness successfully shows us what it's like to have someone close to us who is battling with such internal strife. They are reclusive, avoidant, disillusioned, and somber, but they keep pushing forward. The game is rather grounded in its portrayal of personal, internal battles with mental health. Simply, the tagline of the game tells us, at the end of everything, just hold on to anything. It feels so sincere and yet so relatable at the same time. And for this reason, this impactful depiction of domestic horror reminds us all that it's honestly okay to not be okay. Number 1. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. It may not surprise you that this remarkable game has earned the top spot on this list. Frankly, we've spoken to quite a few players who've had to put down the controller and temporarily walk away from this title due to its tangible reflection of debilitating mental illness. Senua herself suffers from frequent hallucinations and delusions, which are all symptoms of psychosis. In fact, the game's developer, Ninja Theory, sought to portray this as vividly as possible via emotive motion capture, passionate voice acting, and haunting binaural audio. Ninja Theory worked closely with neuroscientists and experts in psychosis to produce an intense and sensitive experience that fully illustrates how Senua sees the world differently from others. Even down to the puzzle mechanics, we are shown how our brave Celtic warrior can translate the world in a very specific way, seeing signs and symbols around her that others simply overlook. Her perspective is hampered by berating voices, paranoia, and horrific flashbacks that add so much to the harsh and brutal experience, especially when we consider that the final showdown requires Senua to lay down her sword and fully process her own grief. The resulting experience is so raw and astonishing, so bloody and desperate. It is truly a remarkable title that sets the standard for how utterly devastating mental illness can be, and how perfectly it can be explored in video games. And that's our list. We obviously eased up on the goofs and gaffes for this one because we felt that this was such an important subject. If you've been affected by anything raised in this list, we've included some links to some great mental health charities and helplines in the description and the comments below. Take care, everyone, and remember, you are not alone.